The news tightens on Iran after its unprecedented drone and missile onslaught over the weekend against Israel. G7 leaders are mulling imposing sanctions on Tehran, while the European Union leaders, they have already agreed to impose new sanctions on Iran. The G7 leaders also strongly advocated help for Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. Let's look at this report.
Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani on Thursday opened the session of G7 foreign ministers meeting in Capri, underlining the willingness of G7 countries to bring peace to various international crises. The morning meeting was focused on discussing the current situation in the Red Sea and sanctions against Iran, particularly its drone and missile programs.
We are friends of Israel and we support Israel, but we want de-escalation in that area. We all are carriers of this peace initiative. We will also have to address how to sanction Iran in some way for the attack with hundreds of missiles and the drone attack against Israel.
Later in the day, G7 ministers turned their attention to Ukraine crisis. Speaking to journalists on the sidelines of the meeting, EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell said that Western countries must support Ukraine's defense systems and act quickly or risk the victory of Russia over Ukraine.
We cannot only rely on the US. We have to take our responsibility and stop saying, oh, the US will do. We have to do. We have Patriots. We have anti-missile systems. We have to take them from our barracks where they are, just in case, and to send to Ukraine where the war is raging.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock expressed hope that US lawmakers will approve a long-delayed military aid package for Ukraine. Agreeing with his German counterpart, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken also emphasized the need for the US Congress to pass the bill that would provide $60.84 billion to support Ukraine.
In these turbulent times, it is a hopeful sign that there are now signals from the Republicans in the USA that support for Ukraine can be continued intensively.
In this moment, it is urgent that all of the friends and supporters of Ukraine maximize their efforts to provide with Ukraine with what it needs to continue to effectively defend itself against this Russian aggression. For the United States, that means passing the supplemental, the extra budget request that the President has made for Ukraine.
On the other hand, European Union leaders in Brussels also agreed to impose new sanctions on Iran. In a statement, EU leaders urged all parties to exercise the utmost restraint and to refrain from any action that may increase tension in the region.
We have decided to put in place sanctions against Iran. This is a clear signal that we want to send. And we also want to do everything to protect the civilians. Each civilian life matters. We call on the release without any conditions of all hostages. We call on a ceasefire.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin said on Thursday that any new US military aid for Ukraine would not change the situation at the front, where Kyiv's forces were in a poor position. Raghav Kumar Jha for DD India.
European Union leaders are discussing how it could act to catch up with the United States, China and other rivals in a global race in new green and digital technologies on Thursday in Brussels. The former Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta, tasked by leaders with assessing the shortfalls of the EU single market, warned they could not consign a 147-page report that he will present to them to a draw, and he hopes for the best.
When it was created, we were with the Soviet Union. Germany wasn't reunificated. We were less than half of the member states. The European Union name was European Communities, and China and India together were 5% of the world economy. That was the word when we launched the single market 39 years ago. Today, new word and new needs. This is why we are here.
While at the start of the second day of the EU summit, Irish Prime Minister Simon Harris said that a capital markets union had to be done correctly.
there is far too much in terms of assets flowing out of the European Union and into other parts of the world. We're very eager today to play a constructive role in a discussion about Capital Markets Union. But, and there is a but, you can do Capital Markets Union, but you need to do it correctly. And I think harmonisation of corporate tax law must be off the table.
Well, DD India correspondent Ishan Garg now joins us with Brussels with more on these stories. Ishan, many of the EU leaders, they are wanting to tackle the issue of Capital Markets Union. Now, what is the real problem that's preventing this kind of union?
Well, there have been several concerns raised over the years about a potential capital markets union, one of which is, of course, the fact that there are economies within the European Union which are vastly larger than the others. So you've got the French and the German economy, which are clearly the heavy hitters in this bloc. And then you've got the smaller economies who worry that if a capital markets union is created and it's not done in the correct way, as the Irish Prime Minister earlier pointed out, it could become that the economic heavy hitters again get more power from that financial markets and they become the financial superpowers within the bloc. And that's something that has been addressed by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and also the head of the European Council, who say that the capital markets union is going to be essential. And they've given out some data saying that nearly 300 billion euros from European savings have been diverted across every single year, mostly to countries such as the US, and this money could potentially be used to develop the European Union. They've also said that companies can raise close to $470 billion every single year if a capital union is realized. So there's certainly the big upside potential to this idea, but we have read in reports that maybe not all members of the bloc are on board with this idea.
Also, Ishan, how serious is the challenge to make green and digital transitions for all members?
Well, this capital markets union is going to be a part of that transition. It's going to become a crucial peg for the European Union to make its transition towards green energy, towards quicker, better digital services, to making those dreams a reality. This capital markets union could provide with the crucial funding that's required. And the challenges in terms of transitioning to green energy, the challenges in terms of providing better digital services are precisely the reason why the EU leaders have said that this capitals union is crucial for the bloc, and they have said that this funding can potentially be utilized for those projects. But this is only the beginning of that conversation. This 147-page report is really setting the stage for those negotiations and those crucial steps that will be taken in the next few months.
Ishan, also today was the second day of the summit, or is the second day of the summit. Are the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Iran tensions testing the EU's unity as well?
Well, in terms of unity, there isn't a lot of tensions in terms of those issues, but clearly this summit was originally called to discuss the trade issues, to discuss the capital markets issues, but the Iran-Israel tensions and, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war has cast a very huge shadow over these negotiations, and because of that, on day one, we saw negotiations here, we saw the talks here being completely overshadowed by those conversations, which led to, of course, the European Union now formally saying that it's going to impose more sanctions on Iran. And we've also seen some language coming out from the Union saying that they need to hasten the process of providing air missile defense systems to Ukraine more urgently. So it's certainly been a huge part of these conversations, even though it wasn't originally meant to be.
Ishan Garg in Brussels, thanks very much.